For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dale Vile. I'm Managing Director of Freeform Dynamics. We're an industry analyst and research organisation. The big question for me is kind of what is it that makes a positive Vista experience, and what is it that actually leads to some of the horror stories and some of the poor perceptions that we talk about, or we hear. And that's really what today is about. So with that, what I'd like to do is just very quickly get the panel to introduce themselves, because you'll see that we've got some guys here that can directly address some of those questions from both Microsoft perspective, from a customer perspective, and actually from a third perspective, the partner perspective. So John, can you just introduce who you are?
Sure. So I'm John Curran. First of all, I'm with Microsoft. I'm head of the Windows business with Microsoft.
I'm Adrian Davey, head of IT for Tube Lines.
I'm Geoff Connell, I'm CIO at the London Borough of Newham. In terms of Vista usage, we've been trying out in specific areas for quite a long time now.
Okay, thanks Geoff. And from the partner side of the house?
Hi, good morning. My name is Frank Foxall. I'm the CEO of an organisation called Camwood. We're a consultancy organisation who are focused on managing application change.
Good morning, I'm Andy Ray from HP. I'm the Microsoft practice lead here in the UK. I set up the original Microsoft consulting business back in the 90s. So I'm both a partner of AppDNA and Microsoft, but also probably one of Microsoft's biggest customers from a Vista point of view.
Morning everyone, I'm Paul Schnell. I'm CTO at AppDNA. We are providers of a software technology which is an enabler to the app compatibility question, and I'll touch on that in a bit more detail later.
That's great. Okay, well thanks guys. John, can you kick us off with just a quick overview of
Sure.
what Microsoft thinks we are?
You know, from my perspective, this is a really exciting time for us. Windows Vista, we've passed 140 million worldwide licenses sold, so it's the fastest selling operating system in the history of operating systems. So it's very broadly out in the marketplace. And we're seeing great momentum across all of the different aspects of the market, whether it's enterprise, corporations, public sector, consumers, et cetera. We're just seeing broad-based adoption of Windows Vista.
Okay, so Adrian, maybe you can sort of pick up on some things that John was mentioning there in terms of benefits.
So the starting point for us was a decision around, one of our core objectives is we need to be economic and efficient. So what was the business case? Now in the case of Vista, as John mentioned, we've got, just in terms of power management, we've got 2,500 seats, core seats across tube lines. If you take the simple numbers, and there's lots of numbers out there between sort of 45 and 50 pounds per seat in power savings, over the life of this operating system, that's nearly £500,000. A straightforward cost saving to the business. I actually don't have to do anything to get that, and that's straight into my business case. At its simplest, you've been working on a document, you've been writing a Word document. You walk away from your PC, leave it, you haven't bothered saving it. What Vista does is it bungs it into a cache memory, and then if you haven't touched your PC for, depends on what settings you want to, let's say 15 minutes, it turns the PC down into a low power saving mode, switches off the monitor. If you don't come back to your PC for, say, 3/4 of an hour, it'll switch it off. And those are the settings we can take. Now, you come back to your PC, you hit the on button, it just boots up. Whatever you had on your screen when you left is what comes up. So you've not lost any work. The PC saved energy and power. Now, if you multiply that across thousands of PCs, the saving is astronomical.
That's great. Well, that puts a bit of perspective on the whole discussion. So, Geoff, maybe you can sort of elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure. So, to put the Vista deployment into context, Newham runs about 5,000 desktops and is just over midway through rolling out a centrally managed, standardised desktop environment, particularly designed to support flexible working. Drivers for us were, and we have a general policy for wishing to be on the latest stable release of the software that we support. The stack tends to obviously work rather better if you're on comparable versions. So part of it was about not repeating the exercise of application compatibility testing from XP, SP1 to 2, and then on to Vista, and that was a significant factor for us. The green agenda and the pure hard energy saving costs probably followed next, and were really quite substantial. We did some simulated testing for the environment that we're in on our hardware, laptops and laptops, desktops and tablets, and found that it was approximately £50 per year per PC, and that's a big number when you multiply it by 5,000.
One of the big things that is just a fact of life when you're moving operating systems is application compatibility. So I'd like to just hand over to Paul for a few minutes and just talk a little bit about that particular topic.
So in terms of who we are and where we fit in here, as an organisation we provide software called Aptitude. Aptitude is an enabler for both customers and partners when facing this question of which of my applications will work. Do I need to retest my entire portfolio? And we work very closely with partners, the service providers like HP and Camwood. And we enable also the likes of Newham and Tubelines to have visibility of their portfolio and to be able to analyse and directly assess and determine just how much of an impact is this new operating system going to be. How risky is this change? Our Aptitude product analyses all of the applications in the portfolio. And we're able to assess, both in terms of how the applications install and run, whether or not they're suitable. We classify them in terms of the severity of the issues that we discover. We can target very quickly and very accurately applications that have critical issues. And perhaps more importantly, the flip side of that is we can very quickly identify and what is typically the majority of the portfolio which are likely to work as is.
So just picking up on what you were just saying, there's something that we were talking about earlier, Frank, wasn't it? I wonder if you can just elaborate on that piece.
We worked very closely with Tubelines to say there's a manual way of running through a process, or you can actually rationalise your applications. You can then use AppDNA's software Aptitude to actually allow you, rather than looking at this huge big mountain in front of you, it becomes more of a summit that you can actually reach.
One of the things we've done with Camwood, using the product App Tracker, we now have every single application is in a central point. For each application, there's something like 47 pieces of data you need to say it's compliant, which is, the license, the vendor, the deployment methodology, etc., etc. Now, having that level of control, the costs just drop out.
I think it's fair to say throughout my career looking after the Microsoft practice, applications have always been on the critical path for every desktop migration I've ever seen. And we as system integrators and consultancies need to help our customers get over that hurdle. And that's why we picked up and we're working with AppDNA, because it allows us upfront to know which of those applications do we actually need to work on as the systems integrator, and which are going to work anyway, rather than this blind approach of just trying to do 2,000 applications before you actually get to deploy. So.
How long did you spend in the planning process?
We actually wrote the strategy back in 2006, which seems a long time ago, but the view we had was we need to know where we're going and what our long-term objectives are. What's the business case? What's the let's really understand the business objectives and requirements and spend the time doing it. So it sounds a long time, but we've actually been at it now 2 years. But as understanding what our objective is, and then we're constantly working towards that.
In terms of when you looked at the business case for accelerating refresh or fitting in the refresh, you mentioned that earlier on, but from a performance perspective and from a hardware requirement perspective, how did that translate to practical?
Okay, there's a couple of things that we spotted really as issues. One is that the amount of RAM in the machines had to go up to standard of 2 gig, but to be honest, we were doing that with XPSP2 anyway, because a lot of the applications and the amount of file store that people are trying to access, etc., it just ran a lot better anyway. The only other thing that kind of caught us out was some of the older laptops not having TPM chip in there, so that BitLocker wouldn't work. Those are probably the only real hurdles that we've come across.
Thanks very much for coming along, and hopefully there's been some great insight there. Thank you everyone.
Thanks very much.